This episode is sponsored by Aquanow, the premier crypto as services provider, and sponsored by XDC Network, a layer 1 EVM compatible blockchain, revolutionizing the digital space.
In today's episode of FUMO, Future Money, we're going to dive into how AI is going to change the way we live, work, and play. Suresh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for inviting me on a lovely day.
Live in Dubai, you've flown in from the US, where you've lived for the last several decades, helping work in tech, build banks, supporting fintech, and you're now deep into the world of AI and agentic AI. And what we're going to do today is dive into what it's going to mean for us in our daily lives in the next 3, 5, 7 years. Because this is your thesis when we share, this is going to change everything. Just like the app economy, the mobile internet, the consumer app economy changed the way we learn, the way we shop, the way we even date and meet our partners. Everything got changed. Politics. You think we could be on the verge of a paradigm shift of that magnitude, right, Suresh?
I think we'd go from a tell me economy to a do it for me economy. So what the previous mobile revolution did was untethered us. It allowed time shifting and place shifting. So if you take just watching videos, they got untethered. You could watch it anywhere at any time. Previously, you had to have set your clock with some kind of VCR recording device to achieve time and place shifting, which is now you don't even think. You say, oh, I can watch anything anytime. Well, similarly, you're going to go from a tell me economy, which is represented by 2 million mobile apps, to a do-it-for-me economy that will be represented by billions of skill sets built by our next generation.
Let's double-click on that from a tell-me economy to a do-it-for-me economy. So in a tell-me economy, what happens? We can access information anytime, anywhere, any place. We don't need to turn our TVs on at 7 p.m. to watch a show. We don't need to walk to the library to get information. It's just, as you said, untethered. And that's the world we've been living in.
For 15 years, roughly.
Yeah.
17.
Yeah, I guess since the mobile revolution, smartphone revolution, on top of the consumer internet revolution of the 90s. How does that world look like going forward? What are the building blocks? What are the stepping stones in that path to this next paradigm shift?
So let's take an example of this already. Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
An example of a do-it-for-me would be the preliminary, let's call it the caveman version, what looks like caveman version of Tesla autonomously driving you from point A to point B. It looks like an innovation, but that's today Waymo is running an entire robotic taxi service in San Francisco that has got a superior experience already. So that's do-it-for-me, where you don't have to drive anymore. You just say, take me from here to here and get it done. Whereas the old cruise control was, tell me, show me what your speed is, keep your hands close by, keep your legs on
access to information pretty much, right?
Yeah, give information all the time. Yeah, so you could act. Right? But now the AI does it for you.
The AI does it. But isn't that the world we used to live in, or was it only the kings who lived in that world?
So that's a good point, right? So I was wondering, how do I explain this to myself? How do I find what's coming next? And it turns out that if you go back 1,000 years ago, what a king or an extremely powerful warlord.
Or a prince like Gaurav.
Gaurav,
yeah.
Here we go.
There we go.
Would have 24/7 chefs to cook any meal.
Yep.
Would have a chariot or a horse carriage available at 24/7 to go anywhere they want. Guess what? The average human being has access to it today. It's called Uber or Careem in Dubai. You can call a chauffeur-driven car anytime you want. You have a chef anytime. You'll find a 24/7 restaurant of any cuisine, which means you can do more than a king of 1,000 years ago. You can get any cuisine today through Uber or Careem, right? So if you apply that to medicine, to apply to anything you need, it's coming. Some of them already come. Some of them are going to come. So it's easy to track that.
And why now? What is special about? So we're filming this. It's the tail end of 2024, almost 2025. Why at the tail end of 2024, 25 are we all talking about this? And I don't mean to be geeky here, but agentic AI. What's in the air? What's in the technology? What's in the large language models that's that we're talking about this now? What's in the compute power?
It's many things.
Yeah.
You have to go back to 1995 or 96. Everything is built on the shoulders of our previous generation. We
course,
never,
yeah.
we're
Stand
not,
on the shoulders.
right?
Of,
It's
yeah.
always, right? So if you take around 95 to 97, there was a PhD thesis by two guys in Stanford, Sergey and Larry, that writes about how to traverse a hypertext database. But if you go back, they relied on a guy called Ted Nelson from the 1950s who coined hypertext, right? And that's now the basis. Everybody uses it every day. We don't know it. You type HTTPS, it's hypertext transfer protocol. So that's the basis of everything today, right? But no one knows about it. Nobody cares. It's already there. But then they did more than that. They built a way to traverse this massively new invention in a way that nobody had done it before with a simple algorithm. But then there was another algorithm lurking in the 80s called the ECDSA, elliptical curve digital signature algorithm, which by 10 years later, after these guys, became the basis of the blockchain revolution. It's called, to me, it's an algorithm of trust. And it's still at its infancy. It's already crossed 3 trillion in value. So now, as you start to see these building blocks, by 10 years later, there's a guy called Andy Rubin who built Android. I had the privilege of meeting him, actually, when I was at Google. And that was not the end of it, right? Because information was unleashed, was untethered right now through Google. It was democratized to a great extent. Access to information was democratized, but not processing the information. Now, going back to 95, they invented tokenization of data elements and all of that. My view, 3 versions later, there's a paper that comes in, is attention knowledge is all you need, which leads to the next revolution, which is, by the way, 7 years old already, the LLM. Right? What is LLM? It is a collective knowledge of all human beings ever in one place that is contextually mapped. That's it.
Yep.
Right? So if you go back to the 1,000 analogy of king, live like a king,
Or the prince.
the prince here,
prince.
the king had access to all the information through his advisors.
Sure.
Anything they want to know, somebody had to know. Or obviously you lost his head if you didn't know, but that's a different story. But similarly, and I was always thinking Google only provided access to information, but still not all human beings could process the information they want to.
Sure.
Let's take a simple example of a calculator, right? Not everybody could do math, and the calculator changed that. Anybody could do arithmetic. The spreadsheet came and said anybody could do more complex arithmetic. The LLM is going to take you to a point, you don't even have to process the information. It'll process it for you and get you an answer.
Wow.
So it's same trajectory. Get the human beings on a level playing field, right? If you go back a millennia, the strongest guy dominated until somebody figured out how to make a bow and arrow. So you can now take the guy out from 100 yards. So this battle of leveling up each other's skill sets has been going on forever in the human race.
Yeah.
So now you're leveling up intelligence.
Wow, so it really is going to be a huge paradigm
Huge
shift.
shift, yeah. But how's those, in practical terms, Gaurav, how's this all going to play out? I mean,
Well, that's something
when it comes to building products and businesses and
we have to uncover that,
Yeah.
right? So I think, our audience is a mix of people who are entrepreneurs, investors, and people who are operating businesses today. So from your point of view, where are you seeing this adopted first, and where does it come in later? Is it people who have access to servers, they have access to chipsets, they have access to data sets are the ones that are going to be able to see and absorb the biggest impact first and have financial access or financial advantages or perhaps even political or power advantages because they have access to data? Or is it going to be common, widespread, everyone will have access to it? How's that looking?
It's a
from
combination,
your point
right?
of view?
So I would use the phrase, the requirements document is the new source code.
Could you repeat
run
that?
Oh,
Repeat that.
wait,
Repeat
wait.
that. Yeah.
Let's go back on that.
So if you're an enterprise,
Yeah.
if you have very good documented processes,
Yeah.
so I mean, if the requirements document is your new source code, you don't need to write programs anymore. You just need to know what you need.
I call that
Precisely.
structured data. Is that what you're saying?
No,
as
it's
well?
requirements. If you take an
Right.
enterprise, if
Right.
they have the processes for accounts payable
Okay.
extremely well documented and done, in any other system,
Yeah.
you're maybe an hour away from using AI to automate that. So
Right. So it's all about the process, the systems, not the code, but the documenting how something runs.
or even if you already have it running really well, There are startups already working on extracting business models and data models out of legacy systems and processes, which will then be injected into the next generation programmable ledgers like one that we have. And you have a core conversion in any enterprise within a day.
So
That's coming soon.
So let's look at it this way. If I look at how technology was built, fintech or otherwise, with what we talked about earlier, 2 million apps, app stores, mobile connectivity, access to data, access to services. If we take all of that for granted as a baseline fundamental today for everyone, businesses and consumers alike, is efficiency and optimization the first thing that's going to come out of AI? Because from my understanding, whenever we adopt technology and we're adopting it faster on a global scale, before it used to be 10 years before everyone had access to a piece of technology, 7 years, 5 years. Now everyone has access to hardware and software in a year.
Yeah.
It's
or actually,
incredible.
if you look at the industrialization process, right? So the famous one is the steam engine at the start of the Industrial Revolution. That
Absolutely. Is
took
the extreme.
decades, right?
it's
Before
the
it got
extreme
into the
example.
factory, got put on a
Absolutely.
moving cart that became a train.
Right.
Like steam engine to trains, it's decades, right? It's
So if
what,
I talk
40,
about
50
yeah,
years, I don't know.
if we have all of this for granted
Yeah.
today, right? It seems like optimization and efficiencies. If I optimize my balance sheet for my bank for lending by 5% because I get false negatives, right? That shifts the balance to 10 billion, on large scale. Is optimization there, or are you seeing perhaps other aspects of technology use cases, revenue generation that we haven't seen before?
Is it like basically the two-person company or the two, instead of having
Right.
2 people starting a business, then you have 200 people a few years later, if it's going well, that 2-person, maybe it's not 2, maybe it's 10 or 20. The optimal size isn't 2,000, let alone 200,000.
Yeah.
What does this do for productivity?
Oh, it's an amazing time. Good example would be Tesla again.
Right.
The Tesla factories are how many people? Very few people. It's fully
that right?
automated in many
Wow.
cases.
Right.
Whole cars being manufactured with
Yeah.
robots. There are already robots that are available to do assembly line in food supply, where you can actually put food on a plate and freeze it. That's all going to robots. So you're going to see a level of efficiency. It's essentially zero ops, right? What I'm thinking is
Zero ops.
Zero ops.
What does zero ops mean?
Zero ops is the marginal cost of operation is near zero, which means you achieve it with very little human beings. A good example would be the stablecoin market, which is how many hundreds of billions. So I look at that and say, if you take a bank that is 200 billion in assets with tens of millions of consumers, how many people would you actually need? How much customer support? And this whole thing runs with 0 people, with 0 issues.
Now you're
Yeah.
talking.
Well,
Now you're talking fintech. Now I'm liking this because we've been talking about Tesla and robots, and we've been, warehouses and logistics optimization by Amazon has been, they don't even use lights anymore. The factory is always dark because
it's all robots.
robots use infrared. They don't need lights.
They're little devices from around
Correct.
the factories.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
they're using sensors. They're not using
Who needs lights?
who needs lights. So they're saving bills on energy and lights. It's crazy. But
It's going to be that.
but the fintech side of this is
Yeah, and maybe we should double click on that point
Yes.
of stable coins.
stable coins.
You're right. I mean, the biggest stable coin right now has how many employees? 100, 120?
Just for the asset management
it?
of the fiat, not the stablecoin management, the
Yeah.
asset management, the fiat side of it.
But what's interesting here is you can clearly run a financial institution, a stablecoin institution, with tens of people, maybe even low hundreds. As we know, there's one big one out there, the world's biggest one. But what happens when it hits society, i.e., this technology and what technology can do in its raw form? Maybe this unregulated stablecoin is a great example of that. But then this unregulated stablecoin hits the social construct that we live in. 'Cause everything we live in is, we're not living in this kind of pure thought, right? We have rules and regulations, and I'm not saying they're good or bad. I'm just saying
Compliance.
they're a thing. And it's a thing that comes out of society. So you live in the US, we live in the UAE, or I'm most of my life in the UK, but there are rules in each of these countries, right? And in the US, as you know, you've owned a bank and you helped build a lot of fintechs off the back of your bank. There are quite,
A few steps.
yeah,
Yeah.
when it comes to regulation. And so it'd be really interesting to see as these stable coins to say grow up. That's not the right phrase. But as they get more mature,
Good word.
a lot of the headcount is simply going to be to fit what society, we call it regulation, but what society is asking of certain types of institution, right? So there's almost going to be in certain parts of the economy which are less regulated. So maybe not money and pharma. You get the full force of the productivity boost of AI. And in others, maybe there's a mediation where that full force, like the 40-person stablecoin operation, 120-person, actually ends up with not 40, but 4,000 just because the regulators say, or the politicians, the political, social political environment we live in say, no, you need to have all these people doing
X head count.
Yeah, basically.
Qualified
No,
experts.
they will find new jobs. As I said, these 2 million mobile apps will result in, as you migrate to a skill set economy,
Yeah.
2 billion, maybe 3 billions of skill sets. The next generation will be building those skill sets and collecting rent on those. So we'll go back to an economy that more looks like a medieval type where you had a goldsmith and the blacksmith and each one was an independent worker. This trend reversed with the industrial economy and
Right.
then unreversed itself. The first one was called the Hollywood model, where Hollywood went
Sure.
from a studio model, broke down into gig workers, where the actors were independent contractors. 80 years later, that happened in the 30s. 80 or 90 years later, it's happening in the Uber. It's today, 80 million people in the US are working on an hourly basis.
80 million.
80 million. So that's the number, at least I remember from during the pandemic. So this number is only going to grow. The skill set economy,
Yeah.
you're going to find rents collecting individuals who have built some skill sets in which they're collecting rent. Reminds me of one of the scenes in Star Wars.
Okay. Which scene in Star
I'm
Wars?
trying to
you have
think,
to
there's one
elaborate.
where they walk in and there's like a bar, pub, and there's a guy who fixes things for you for robots and all of that.
Okay.
Everybody you look around is an independent contractor
Contractor.
in that scene.
Yeah.
This is from the 70s. So I think that's going to happen.
What do you think, Gaurav? Is
Well,
independent contractor economy the...
I don't know if people are going to be able to learn that fast. I think AI learns faster. I think AI does things better. I don't know how quickly people can reskill.
There's no coding involved here.
Right. So
No more coding involved. Coding is over.
Coding is over.
Yeah.
So zero ops goes to coding as well,
Yeah.
not
So-
just management.
Yeah.
Coding is over.
Coding is over. But
Wow.
let's...
It's been over for a few months already. It's not- so-
Right, but if we
We have to double click on that because...
we have to
Because non-coders say often coding is over. But
There's still some
you
supervisory coding you need,
Yeah.
but it is not the same as having legions and armies
Sure.
of coders in a building in some part of the
Right.
world.
Yeah, but those coders are behaving like robots anyway, right? I mean, they're not really, because I guess what the question I'm trying to get to is, you said that we need a supervisory coders or a cadre of, whether it's coding managers, coding ethicists, whatever it is. How do we have the supervisors without the kind of apprenticeship when they learn how to code? As in, we manage things, right?
Correct.
But we've also done the apprenticeship where we've learned. It's a bit like, I guess you could say, can you manage a football team if you've not been a football player? Some
That's correct.
people do that, right?
They do.
But in this world, let's say coding, don't we need to go through the steps of learning to code? And
Every generation, there are kids born
Yeah.
who naturally have an aptitude for sports or
Yep.
electronics or
Yeah.
something.
sure,
Those kids will pursue that aptitude.
right,
And they will be playing the roles that you need to play, and they get paid really handsomely for that. Today, we have legions of coders who are, as you said, robotic.
yeah,
Yesterday, I was reading about Claude before I came to this event. I said, let me pull up what Claude's up to, OpenAI is up to.
Claude is up to.
Claude, I said, we can now connect to the Postgres database natively.
What does, for the audience, can you explain what that means?
It means that
Please.
if there are millions of installations of the database, you can just use Cloud to pull out data and get you build a dashboard for yourself or whatever you need. You don't
Right.
need to hire a coder.
Right,
Wow.
You just need to connect it once. Or if you're in a data center that provides native connection,
right.
you can then use it to create large action models, which is what my company does,
Right.
which is now you can
I
end up.
guess it's like, you're a massive car enthusiast.
I am.
And, I'm sure you know how exactly the car works, right? But most people who drive cars they don't really know how the
I have
car
a
works.
basic understanding. I don't have a depth. Couldn't take an engine apart and put it back together, unfortunately. I'd love to learn. But
Whereas
AI isn't going to do that for me.
150 years ago.
A robot will be able to, but by then maybe the combustion engine is long gone. We don't know yet.
Oh, no, they're all reversing that. But that's another podcast.
Oh no,
It's
he
okay.
wants to hear the vroom vroom vroom, or maybe the EV will make that noise for you.
No, they do, but it's
It's
quite
not the same.
pathetic.
It's a synthetic noise.
It's a synthetic
It
noise.
is synthetic. But when we're coming back to this piece about skills, zero ops, zero building, zero code, right? There are two aspects of this which are just pretty interesting: is which places are going to see the biggest benefit, and which places are going to see the largest adoption by bad
Place
actors.
meaning locations, countries, or do you mean industries?
Businesses, industries,
Businesses.
industries, because businesses are always going to be moving faster, and
Sure.
if individuals are businesses as well,
Yeah.
because it's the gig economy, it's business, 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 business. So from your side, with what you do today, how are you using or taking advantage of this current landscape?
So here's what we did, right? We looked at the processes we had. We identified that we already had about 62 processes in the enterprise, well documented, used by human beings, where data comes in paper or electronic. People do something, check something, do something, and then out.
Basic data entry management.
Something goes, something
reviews.
happens, is
Sure.
accounts payable or accounts receivable or client onboarding, invoicing, right? Of 6 years. So we said, look, how many of these can move into autonomous? I have an input from outside world, inside is fully autonomous, and then at the output, some human being approves it. And every other human in the loop in the middle is not required anymore because of consistency of operation.
Okay.
Right? If you take a bank, banks have been delegated in many countries to review transactions for various things like fraud and money laundering and all of that.
Correct.
The write-ups on those are not consistent by human beings. And now, as you know, the number of transactions in every bank has gone through the roof every year because of digitization of economy. They don't have enough trained human beings. They're not even trained in law enforcement, right? So you're going to have AI come into play where it's going to have really, imagine AI has got the intelligence of all human beings, right? So it knows every regulation on everything. So it can write a beautiful report if you know how to do it, if you know how to precisely use the LLM.
Right.
It can give you the best possible report you could ever write in an unbiased fashion to the extent the way you ask the question.
So you have to be very focused and specific on this, because I know in the early days of ChatGPT and our math riddles and things that we bounce around each other in previous episodes and we talk, ChatGPT hasn't been very reliable
It's
or
autoregressive.
information.
No,
Right?
no, by
So it has to be
definition.
focused by what you're saying.
No.
Right?
So see, LLMs by definition are autoregressive, stochastic in the sense the output will always be probabilistic. Will be. It is
Okay.
defined to be probabilistic.
Right.
The best way to put it is if you walk 10 blocks in New York City and somebody asks you the same question for which you need to have an answer in 5 sentences, those 5 sentences will never be the same in any of the 10 times you're asked the question as a human being.
As a human being.
As a 10th time, your answer may be completely different from the first one because you realize you said something different in the first one. Maybe it's not what you think by the 10th one.
So it's almost like what we say is whispers, right? You know?
LLMs are like that.
Right.
Depending on which token went first, the next one, it sounds like a human being, but it's very probabilistic.
Right.
But it has all the knowledge of all human beings in it. So then
So-
the challenge comes. If you go to the action world, which is what we are in,
Yeah.
how do you precisely understand a human intention in any language? Because LLMs, we are now, our platform, we can take inputs in any language or a combination of languages. It could be English, Hindi and English combined. It could be Tamil and Kannada combined. Doesn't
That's
matter.
very complex.
Right? So now we need to map the intention. But at the same time, just like a mother knows with a toddler that he didn't like this yesterday, but today I need to mix it with sugar when he asks for food, you have to know the context and the contextual memory from the past. When you order pad thai, I should know that you don't like peanuts. So we built a memory function. We had to come up with a new data structure or our own hybrid data structure to handle a very precise memory for you. It works in enterprise as well. So once you have those two, you have precise actions because enterprise is a finite world. Personal AI is infinite to a great extent.
So that's why when we're talking about, you can't really compare the two because the data sets plus the actions are more finite and fixed in a established financial application like we're talking about right now, as opposed to perhaps an individual piece. But we were talking about math.
Could we double click on that about what your question is? Because the world we're talking about relies on precision.
Yes.
So of course we can give humans different answers. But if you ask Gaurav 8 by 8, he should hopefully
Answer the consistently the
five
same
times
time.
give
Yeah.
you 64 5 times, right? He won't say,
Maybe.
Or if my
maybe-
jacket is green,
Well,
I'll
yeah.
say it's green.
Or if you ask Gaurav, I'm looking at something, he'll give me the same factually.
Correct.
And machines, I mean, obviously, what the world looks like in maybe even 3 months, let alone 3 years, isn't what it looks like today. But today, these models, they're probabilistic, but it's a lot of inaccuracies that make it hard for, you need someone to,
Fact check.
a human expert usually, or so I was okay, oversharing now. I was in Munich
Yeah.
this
Yes.
weekend before we filmed this, and there's a replica of the Juliet statue, Romeo and Juliet Capulet, and I'm looking at the statue. It's a replica of the Verona Juliet, and it's a tradition in whatever that you got to rub one particular breast of the statue. It's a Verona tradition, and then you get luck and love. And I type into, I'm looking at this going, what is this statue? I didn't realize it was Juliet. I'm saying, why is everyone rubbing one particular breast? And I'm like, this is, so I put it in ChatGPT, but I make a mistake. I say, why is everyone rubbing the left breast? ChatGPT replies with 100% confidence, the left breast because da-da-da, da-da-dee, da-da-da.
You just made up an answer.
No, the answer was right, but it was the right breast, not the left breast.
But it gave you the answer regardless.
It gave me the right answer, but factually, there was a factual inaccuracy
So I
in
said
there.
it's
Pause.
probabilistic.
So, accuracy and probabilistic nature of these models. What's your thinking on this, Suresh? Can we
Trusted.
use these models today for important, critical tasks?
Of course you can. And I'll give an example of this where I had a revelation
A revelation.
some time ago, revelation of what ChatGPT.
Okay.
My
AI.
personal
Oh no, your
revelation.
personal revelation.
my-
The
not-
book- I thought he was going to overshare.
No.
Okay.
The book of
So-
AI revelations.
So I said, let me check how good this is. So I type, tell me, and Tirukkural is an ancient scripture out of India.
Out of where?
India, South India, in Tamil.
Okay,
right?
Tamil scripture.
So I said, hey, tell me what Tirukkural says about money and greed or something like that.
Money and greed.
Yeah, yeah.
We're coming back to the topic of the podcast.
So
What did he say about FUMO, future money?
no, I'll check. But
You
so
gotta check.
this is now 2,000 years old.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT gives me 3 quotes and cites the citation number and an explanation of the Tirukkural is all 7 Tamil words. It's a verse in 7 words. And I'm like, this is impressive. Then I said, let me check what others are saying. I can't find those verses anywhere else. They don't exist. ChatGPT was able to compose Tirukkural almost as good as the original on the fly.
It had made up its own version.
Yes.
How did it do that?
Because it's got the skill set. So I realized, oh my God, this is a highly skilled device.
Right.
I didn't care about it hallucinated. That's okay. The fact that I need to harness that skill set. So that's where you learn to harness the skill set of ChatGPT.
So that's the new skill set, is how to use ChatGPT as opposed to coding for ChatGPT, learning a skill set for financial, anything. It's just how to use the
How
tool.
do you use, you have to look at this a highly expert. Let's imagine it's a human being who can compose a Kurul. As a human being, I can read Tirukkural, but I can never even compose one if you give me like 3 months to write one. It's so hard. And this one can do it in 30 seconds.
Why is it so hard?
Hmm?
Why is it so
Because
hard?
you have to come up with a meaning of a concept. Let's say money is bad for you, whatever it is,
Yeah.
in 7 words, precisely in a particular verse.
Like a haiku. Kind
Yeah.
of.
So very hard to do.
Tamil. Like,
Whereas this thing could do it like that, could do 3 in
because
30
it had
seconds.
because it had been fed all this Tamil
and it-
literature, scripture.
Yes, and it contextualized that, and it could repeat that just like that,
Wow.
right?
But I'm
And-
going to come back to fintech.
Fintech,
I'm going to
yeah.
I'm going to be a bad man.
No.
I'm going to do this thing.
What
where
does
I'm gonna
money
be
look like in the world of agentic AI? Or
What does it? I mean, who's going to benefit from it first? Is it going to be, JP? Is it going to be big institutions, or is it going to be people who have several mobile apps with, where they want to learn what stocks to buy or things to do or how much to save or optimization. I mean, things that people really want to do.
What does finance look like? It's
What does it
year
look like?
2035.
Yeah.
What does finance look like in this agentic AI age?
So one way to look at it is if you look at the blockchain world as a precursor to what could come in 30 years from now or 20 years from now.
Oh, you mean we'll still be talking about it at conferences and...
No. But if you look at what's happening in terms of lending protocols.
Right, okay.
If you take a lending in the bank versus a lending protocol in the blockchain as an example, right? In a bank, what do? You apply for a loan, you go through a whole bunch of documentation, and then you disperse the loan.
Sure.
Right. But if you take certain types of loans that are simple in nature, they should be happening faster. For example, at our bank many years ago, we worked with a company called Dave
Dave, yeah.
to launch a $25 loan program that had never been done before that. Because the cost of doing a $25 loan in a normal bank would be $250. So you can never make a $25 loan.
Yeah.
Right?
So what was a dumb question? What's a $25 loan being used for?
It was an advance. It was
An
a
advance.
wage advance.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Top up bill payments, people
okay.
doing heating, electricity, certain things might be interesting.
I had the same question. I was like, who would borrow
Why would bother with
$25?
$25?
Microloans.
But
yeah.
it's
That's the cost of a coffee now in New York.
But the
no? $25?
demand was so high because
Yeah.
there were people who needed the $25 to buy food on a Friday night. We would see
Wow.
the requests happening at midnight, 2 a.m., 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And I never understood. Then we found there is such a huge market for that. That's a different point, different discussions. Gini index has a correlation to that. Right? So if you look at the lending protocol in the blockchain, for example, if you have very precisely collateralized borrowing, you're able to make a loan happen immediately and also close it out also. It's happening, like how you do in a margin trading
Right.
account. So you're going to see more of those complex loans getting simplified as processes, right? And that'll enable the fractional, the way the banks lend today, they're lending based on insurance. In a lot of ways, if you're regulated by your insurance company, they will not let you take your car out of the garage because they say, if you take the car out of the garage, you're going to have an accident. Go take an Uber, but keep paying me the premium for the car insurance. So a lot of that, there is a way the banking system is set up. Right, the insurance in the banking system prohibits you from taking certain risks,
Yeah.
which you
but
should.
going back to, but this is a really important and a very interesting analogy, but in theory, or from a technology perspective, not just in theory, in practice, from a technology perspective, you're describing how blockchain can simplify finance and
Cost
yet,
optimize as well.
Yeah, cost optimize, yeah. And yet here we are, it's end 24, early 25, and this technology has been around for 16, 17 years, right? And it's not being used at scale. Of course, it's out there, it's being used, but it's not being used at scale because of a lack of, in most countries in the world, regulatory consensus or approval for these processes. And that was kind of my earlier question about you can have a stablecoin company with 40 people or 120 people, but banks have tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands because of sometimes legacy processes and business models, but also a legacy regulatory environment, if you can call it that, or a different. How does, because that's kind of why we haven't seen blockchain at scale, or one of the reasons, right?
It's one of the other
and so
reason which
for this
is-
AI world that you've described, and it's been an amazing conversation. Fortunately, we'll have to wrap up soon, but it's been an amazing conversation. So thank you for all the insights, Suresh. But that world of the do-it-for-me economy, the live like a king or a prince.
I like
Will
Gaurav.
live exactly. We're all going to live like Gaurav. How or like you, Suresh, you're the
Not me.
king.
Thank you.
How does? But will the regulatory / political environment allow it to happen, or
Let's put
particularly
it-
when it comes to money,
Let's
finance?
put it this way: the blockchain
Yes.
world just survived a report by the U.S. government 2 years ago where it called it the single biggest threat to the financial security of the United States. Very few things can survive that. It survived and grew. The price of Bitcoin has gone up.
Yes.
That tells you there's a groundswell of people
right.
that are part of that,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I always wondered, why is this? Why is this? How did this survive? It's evolutionary. It supported the demand for GPUs through consensus mining, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And today those GPUs are needed for AI, right? So you're going to see, when you look at this back 100 years from now, you're going to see, oh my God, what a lovely coincidence that this thing was based on GPUs And I never understood why the hell do you need so many GPUs to build consensus and mine
Right.
some number. But that kept NVIDIA profitable
Very.
and putting money into making better GPUs,
Yeah.
which today has given us ChatGPT. Because
Yeah.
ChatGPT is nothing better than great, very large math of correlations and covariance matrices. You need the GPUs from
Right.
NVIDIA or somebody like that.
So, Ronit, I know we have to wrap
to
up,
wrap up,
but
yeah.
unfortunately, or fortunately, we found ourselves in a very awkward situation in this podcast.
I'm not sure where this is going, but carry on. Yes.
We actually don't know what Suresh does today. So, Suresh, for the audience and everyone else, tell us what your company is and what do you do?
The issue is there's so much he does. I
know,
wonder, we
I
should
know.
have asked ChatGPT to, or,
Maybe I did this on purpose at the end of the
Yeah.
podcast to close to
Yeah.
it. So I think you're going to have to tell us.
Okay, so I have a...
Who is
in-
Suresh?
in
and what
2
do you
minutes or
do?
less.
Yeah,
So
what do you do?
I'm an ex-Google Googler, which is my first and last job. I ended up buying a bank, which was a fintech bank, which is still a fintech bank, and I built a
What's
tech
it called? Sorry.
CBW.
Thank you.
I built a tech firm, which has now a foundational AI platform for large action models. We talked about execution across enterprises and individuals as well, which we're launching as an agent marketplace shortly.
And what's it called?
NetXD. I should say the name.
Yes. Yes. And so what does NetXD do?
So NetXD has this immutable ledger platform,
Okay.
It's, inspired by the blockchain to some extent, running across about 20 financial institutions now. And it has an AI foundational platform, which is available as a marketplace to build actions using AI.
And so how are your clients using it today? What are the use cases?
The platform runs several banks, including in the Middle East, which is a traditional platform, except because of the immutable nature, their cost of reconciliation operations is really low. It gives them a competitive advantage. Now with the AI model, it allows them to provide their consumers a do-it-for-me capability.
Business consumers, retail consumers, what kind? So they're using
They
your
will be
model.
using the AI model will be coming shortly, yes.
they're using the blockchain, the ledger right now.
The ledger is
or-
it's abstracted away.
Right.
The use of the immutability allows you to deal with reconciliation effectively. It also supports real-time data analytics. So allows it's like real-time data analytics with like the multiple sensors in Tesla. You have to know what's going on around you in real time for you to steer.
Right,
have
right,
lane
right.
control. So
Yeah.
So-
And that bank, sorry to interrupt,
Please, no.
Gaurav, the bank, you just bought a bank, right? So anyway, I love it when people say just bought a bank. Should we go and buy a bank, Gaurav? What do you think? Yeah,
should.
You should buy a
you
bank.
guys could afford.
A friend did that a couple of years ago.
I
saw it on the board.
know you do. Thank you.
We're
he
missing
is,
out.
He is
We're
the
missing
prince,
out.
right? So
There was a time you could buy Citibank for $1.
Just the shares, but not
yes.
the whole thing.
Yeah, let's not go there. So going back to the bank, the fintech bank, there are a lot of fintechs in the US that were basically built off your bank, right? Your bank services. Do you want to name drop one of them or two of them? You can't. You're too.
I
You
can't.
can't. That's too.
Why don't we just name the bank?
Publicly
Google it. Okay.
What's the name of the
ChatGPT
bank?
it
What's
is.
the name of the
simple,
bank?
Yeah.
I'll give you some public. Simple.
Simple.
Movin'.
Moving.
I would say Dave was built on us initially.
Okay.
Uplift that did airline loans. So we can go on. There's quite a few. So
Last question. Your son's in AI as well.
Ooh, you couldn't resist.
I couldn't resist.
You couldn't resist.
No, there's a second question coming, but first, before you get on to that,
Yeah.
your son's in AI. We don't want to mention his name or
Yeah.
embarrass him, but he is also building. He's graduated from university and he's now building an AI-based company, both dad and son separately.
no,
in
he's
different parts of the
he's
US.
Way
So
smarter. He's one of those kids who loves physics, and physics is a calling. It's not it's not
physics is a
something-
calling.
Yeah, because you got to love physics to do it. It's
Right.
not something you can just
AI Revelations. I'm telling you, that book is
Yeah,
coming out.
I know.
Yeah. So he's doing something very deep in AI. And
In deep into AI. So how does that work out? Like when you're not there for Thanksgiving, but family meals. I mean, father and son both
but
building AI
This
companies.
is the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson of the fintech world.
No,
Is this
there's a lot of ways. I think he's a different generation.
Yeah.
I actually learned from him when
Right.
I talked to him.
It is
So
the Jake Paul
you have
versus
to
Mike Tyson of the
see-
fintech world.
Easy tiger.
So think of it this way.
Yeah.
The best way to think of it
Yeah.
is when he was 3 years old, he came into my room. I was listening to radio, Garrison Keillor, and he got very confused because he kept looking at my monitor and he said something like email, but it didn't make sense, the sound. I had to explain to this kid that the radio was a TV without picture because he only knew TV from the day he was born. right? Similarly, these kids have a very different perspective on how they.
Sure.
Let's say he would be a natively AI kid,
Yeah.
right? So when you talk to him, you understand his perspective, how he sees AI. So we have to learn from this next generation.
Totally.
Because they train differently than us. You have to think of all of his LLMs.
Yeah.
We're trained differently. Each LLM is a different training.
Yeah. And of course, you seem to be in a great place having a kid who's already building
Wow.
AI companies and, getting funding and all those kind of
I
things.
tried to
and
get a piece of the company. I kind of made the case. I told him that I seed funded his diapers.
I know.
And he still won't get me a piece
You
of the
don't
company.
have any equity in the company?
I tried. I said I seed funded the diapers. I seed funded the college.
University? Yeah.
And still, he said no.
I mean, would he have been in New York studying,
yeah, he said no.
a young Hamilton if he
my
hadn't?
God,
Yeah.
tears.
I know.
Can you imagine that?
I
He said
know.
no. And some VC is going to get a piece of the company, and I can't even
You
get it.
got
for-
shut out of the seed funding round.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Or maybe you did the seed funding. So if you were not lucky enough to have a kid who's obviously as smart and well turned out as your kid is, if you had a, I don't know, your future kid, Gaurav. Well,
My future kids.
What advice would you be giving parents today?
Oh dear.
People in their 40s and 50s. How do they prepare their kids for
Let
this
them
world?
be what they are
Just let them be.
because the future will reveal itself to each kid in the way they are trained and what they find.
This is
as
sounding like
opportunity.
some 3,000-year-old Tamil scripture now.
Yeah,
It's
it
not-
is. It is.
It
I'll
is?
tell you, it is why. Because
Yeah.
I have more than one kid, right? The other kid is not in physics.
Okay.
So each one will find a role
They'll find
in
their
society.
way, their path.
So that's how the world has been always, ever since whenever, right?
Right.
Time immemorial. So I think we'll all be fine.
Let's not try to micromanage
No,
them.
you don't need to.
You know, it's
So
it's,
don't
it's
sign them up for AI prenatal classes.
No,
or
it's,
something. Okay.
this is the equivalent of signing your kid for SAP classes 20 years ago. I mean, you really don't need to do that.
Or learning Japanese. So.
You don't need
pretty
to do that.
interesting. It brings me to think of a kind of a Nostradamus kind of thing. I mean,
Okay.
when you look at the adoption of this tech, the way it can happen, and the shift is, like we talked about, paradigm shift. I wonder how many startups that have been operating for 5 to 7 years, servicing banks with this technology, is just going to be replaced by banks because they can build it and do it themselves in the next 2 years.
Well, it's like.
And I wonder the same thing
It's the
with
Elon,
the
I
other
think it's
side.
an
It's
Elon
going to be
Musk
super.
saying, right? The LLM killer. Like each time Apple would announce something in one of their developer conferences, boom, another X number
So it's
of
kind of Nostradamus
startups
a little
go
bit,
out
isn't
of
it?
business.
But this
Yeah,
time it's a
wow.
tsunami. I
Yeah.
was listening to Vinod Khosla at an event. Vinod
Right.
is saying, 60-70% of you are dead.
startups.
He just pointed to the audience.
But that's what I'm
67%
saying. I'm
of it,
thinking
yeah.
it's pretty scary
And
when you
li-
think about it.
Listen to
Yeah.
Eric Schmidt's video that was pulled off from YouTube. We're speaking.
Which
I'll
Eric Schmidt one?
I'll send a
Yeah.
copy to you.
We'll put it in the link
So
in
he,
the show
he
notes
was
or
talking
something.
at a
Yeah.
Stanford class.
Oh yes, I know which one
and
you
then
mean.
he
Yeah.
said he was wrong, that things are going to happen much faster in 6 months as opposed to 3 years. And the rate at which this is going, it's essentially, I don't think it's not doing anything new other than anything that's process oriented. The human in the loop is going to go away, so it's going to be faster. The interesting thing about even banking is if your back office becomes faster, your front office experience is delightful. The reason people are unhappy with the front office is
Sure.
the back office delay gives them
Yeah.
uncertainty of something.
Yeah.
So
Just lack of knowledge, lack of.
I think it's almost saying it'd be smarter to invest in a bank that's using AI and making their ops zero and efficient and getting higher margins than actually buying a bank.
Well, I think
I'll give you a list of the banks that are using my platform.
money
That's
is
kind of-
better to do that than build one yourself.
so.
Wow.
Money is going to become delightful. We're going to live like kings and princes, and
You're going to pay for it one way or another, Ronit. But yeah, we'll get into that next time. Who's paying for it? But yeah.
Suresh, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much
Thank you
for
so
joining
much.
us.
Wonderful.
This was
Thank you.
delightful. Thank you.
Thank you
guys.
so much for
Thank you.
joining us.
Stay
Thank you.
tuned.